Welcome to Gloria Meets. Our first guest, you might remember her from when she was on Coronation Street. Now she is the only woman directly elected mayor. It's Tracy Brabin.
And you just knew this was the moment. This was the moment that everybody's talked about. You know, this, you should just knee them in the balls and run away or whatever. And that freeze was really quite frightening, that I wasn't really capable of then moving, because I just knew that that's what his intention was.
Plus, there really is only one Ann Widdecombe.
It was chance because Mr. Wright didn't happen to come along. It was choice because it was never a big enough priority to go out looking for him.
And Conservative MP Shailesh Vara.
One day, somebody who is not white is going to make it as a Conservative MP, so why shouldn't it be me?
All that after your news headlines.
A very good evening. It's 6:01 here in the GB newsroom. The United States says yesterday's armed rebellion in Russia was a direct challenge to Vladimir Putin's authority and reveals cracks appearing in his military strategy. The mutiny by the Wagner mercenary group was called off last night, and it's understood its leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, will be exiled to Belarus. His fighters were en route to Moscow to remove Russian commanders Prigozhin blames for mishandling the war. Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, says the turmoil caused could take months to play out, but is likely to affect Moscow's capabilities in Ukraine.
To the extent this presents a distraction, a loss of focus for the Russians, that may help the Ukrainians on the battlefield. Exactly where this goes, we don't know. But what we do know is that we've seen real cracks emerge. Again, a direct challenge to Putin's authority.
And while the immediate risk to Vladimir Putin appears to have been contained, emergency security measures remain in place in Moscow, as Russian journalist Alexei Vir told GB News earlier.
Everything has been resolved. It seems that the catastrophe has been avoided. We still do have some extra law enforcement here on the streets, and they are wearing some heavy gear, for example, bulletproof vests and helmets. They have machine guns, which is unusual. But as you can see here, life continues. The situation here in downtown Moscow doesn't seem any different from the usual. The Red Square is still closed, but other than that, everything seems fine.
The Chancellor says raising interest rates is one of the most effective methods to curb inflation. This week, rates were hiked up to 5% from 4.5%, the 13th rise in a row, and it was the sharpest increase since February. And the move means mortgage holders are preparing for a big jump in their monthly repayments. Hundreds of mourners have gathered in London for a silent walking vigil marking the first anniversary of Zara Alina's death. The 35-year-old law graduate was sexually assaulted and killed as she walked home from a night out on June the 26th last year. 29-year-old Jordan McSweeney is currently serving a life sentence, having been jailed for at least 38 years. Friends and family of Ms. Alina joined the vigil at Valentine's Park in Ilford. Farah Naz, her aunt, says we need to keep spreading the word.
It could have been any one of us, your sister, your daughter, your niece. Let's spread the word. Let's disrupt violence against women and girls. Let's together interrupt it. Let's together confront it. Let's not look the other way, and let's get other people not to look the other way.
All state secondary schools in England are now equipped with a defibrillator. The government says secondary schools received priority because of the risk of cardiac arrest, which increases with age. The Department for Health says the devices will also be rolled out in primary and special schools. That's due to be completed by the end of the summer term. And in a few hours' time, it will be goodbye Yellow Brick Road for good, in this country at least. Sir Elton John will close the Glastonbury Festival by headlining the Pyramid stage, his final UK gig, 53 years after his first. Now, Sir Elton's promised a number of special guests, and also to open with a song he hasn't played in the last 10 years. People started claiming front row spots at the crack of dawn around 4 a.m. The performance doesn't start till 9.
Turned up 3 hours after these guys. I was here at 7 a.m. I was third in the queue, and you can't miss Elton John. Last ever UK gig, Glastonbury. What a day.
Look, I kind of kept the tickets initially, but just for like Elton. So I figured like this is such a once in a lifetime chance that I can sleep any other day, but like front row Glastonbury last UK concert, that's probably going to be like a once in a lifetime chance.
Lovely weather for Glastonbury. We do hope you've been enjoying the warm conditions, but the Met Office is warning people to enjoy the heat responsibly. It is after the forecaster recorded the joint hottest temperature of the year in Lincolnshire earlier, with 32.2 degrees in Coningsby, equalling the figure in Surrey, in Chertsey, earlier this month. Thunderstorms and heavy showers, though, are expected to hit northern England, Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland later this evening. TV online, DAB and TuneIn Radio, this is GB News. Now it's time for Gloria Meets.
Tracy Brabin, West Yorkshire Mayor, the first and the only woman Metro Mayor. Why?
Well, you tell me, because it is one of the best jobs in politics. There's 10 Metro Mayors across the country. We represent 22 million people. And I am the first woman, like you say, but hopefully an inspiration to others. There will be other mayors coming through the system with further devolution, which is really exciting, I think. And I'm hoping that women can see, that I'm really enjoying it, we're getting things done, and that they are inspired to put their hand in the air to be selected.
Do you think it means your priorities as a mayor are different by virtue of the fact that you're a woman?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, our lived experience as women it's our superpower, isn't it? Because we know what needs to be done. And I think one of the first decisions I made as mayor was to invite Alison Lowe to be my deputy mayor for police and crime. And as a woman of colour as well, and somebody who was an ex-councillor and also the chair of the police and crime panel, came with enormous experience, but also her own lived experience. And she talks very openly about being a survivor of child abuse and so on, and my lived experience together has driven our focus on the safety of women and girls as a priority for our police and crime plan. So leadership really matters, and I think hopefully that also impacts on our policies.
Now, before you were West Yorkshire Mayor, you were a Member of Parliament, a Labour Member of Parliament. Before that, you had a great life looking, at least from the outside. You had lots of TV roles, amongst which you were Trisha Armstrong in like the greatest show on the planet, Coronation Street. Why jack in being an actor, an actress for politics?
Well, it wasn't that I jacked it in and then decided to be a politician. Fate and circumstance decided it for me. You'll remember Jo Cox. As an actor, I often spent time supporting Labour candidates in elections, whether that's councillors or candidates to be MPs. And I met Jo, blown away. She's an incredible woman, and campaigned in Batley and Spen with Jo, and then again when she was elected to keep the local library open. And then when she was murdered, I mean, we were all so shocked. It was so out of the blue and awful. When I went to the funeral and I said to one of her friends, what can I do? And she said, do you want to be an MP? I suddenly realised, actually, that's it. That's what I'm, I wasn't guaranteed that I would be the candidate because there were 40 others. But I thought, no, I must do that for my town, because I was born in Batley. My mum had a cafe in Birstall, and I knew Jo. I also hadn't tried to be an MP before, so I didn't have that sort of that baggage. And also, I think actors have enormous empathy, and I think that was really needed because we were really hurting as a community. And people would see me in the street and burst into tears because it would remind them that I'm only there because Jo wasn't. So really, really tragic. And I didn't really know what I was doing either. So I became an MP and I was in so much shock. I'd never even been in blooming House of Parliament. So it was a tough gig, but lots of support from colleagues like yourself and others in Parliament to get through.
So you've had these great jobs: politician, leading politician, MP, mayor, actor. But actually, your start in life was really humble. You grew up in a council house.
Well, yeah, and what's been really useful about that experience is my dad was always in and out of work. He was a salesman. And we'd bought a house and then couldn't continue paying the rent, the mortgage. And obviously this chimes with so many people at the moment with mortgages sky high. So my mum took the key back to the building society. And for a while, there was huge anxiety that we were homeless. And, you know, we were very young. So my mum had 2 little ones. And my dad went to the council and threw himself on the mercy of the council because we were going to be homeless. And we got a 2-bedroom council flat. But what was really powerful about that is that I know that I've only been able to achieve what I've achieved because we had that security, that it wasn't about a landlord who was then going to sell the property or put the rents up. You know, that's why, for me, one of my manifesto commitments, 5,000 affordable homes. And we know that housing is such a huge crisis. You will not flourish unless you have safe home. And that's why it's in London and elsewhere, mayors across the country are really seeing housing as a priority. So it does motivate you. You know, how you face challenges or what's in front of you actually is useful when you go on into a political life. And that's why it's really important that we get diversity in Westminster of people who've lived and had different experiences, not all the same journey through, whether that's Eton or Oxbridge and so on, but they know the price of things.
There's not enough people from working class backgrounds in politics.
Oh, that's true. And diversity across the region as well, not just from London, you know, from the regions outside of London. They bring a completely different voice. And that's why we need to get rid of the House of Lords and have that regions and nations, that democratically elected representation of the whole of England and the UK.
I want to ask you about what happened to you when you were aged 20 at university.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was really lucky to go to university and I did drama. And I was attacked by a stranger in the street who tried to rape me. He was caught, he went to prison, I got justice. And so actually, for a horrendous incident, it was a good news story because he wasn't my husband's friend or my colleague at work or a stranger that was never caught. You know, it actually was, I got justice. But I remember being in the police station and a young woman coming up to the desk whilst I was leaving because I'd been there overnight. And she said, we found this shoe in our garden and we heard screaming last night and we're really worried. And I was like, that's my shoe. What was wrong with you? Why didn't you come out? She said, well, we were really scared. I said, and there was a group of women in a house that heard me fighting for my life outside and were too scared to come out. And I just thought at that point, oh, this is terrible, this is hopeless. And it politicised me. So in a way, whilst it was obviously horrendous and it was really tough for a couple of years about feeling anxious all the time, it was my political journey into the women's movement, into Greenham Common, to understanding why it happened, because it was about power. So, was it horrendous? I've been able to, and this is the glory of it, I've been able to use that experience to then put the safety of women and girls at the heart of my police and crime plan, investing many millions of pounds into making West Yorkshire the safest place to be a woman or a girl.
Fighting for your life, those are words that you just used. It sounds like an absolutely horrific attack. In fact, you described it as the worst thing that you could imagine having happened to you. How, you mentioned a couple of years after that things were tough. In what sense? Is it flashbacks? Is it trauma? Is it sleepless nights? Is it, put it into your own words, most of us, thank goodness, have never been subject to what you went through.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say there's flashbacks, but there was certainly something about walking around a corner, somebody stood there and you just knew this was the moment. This was the moment that everybody's talked about, that your mum has said this, you know, this, you should just knee them in the balls and run away or whatever. And that freeze was really quite frightening, that I wasn't really capable of then moving because I just knew that that's what his intention was. What really helped me, Gloria, was I got compensation for the attack and I bought a bicycle. And from then on in, I thought, I'm never going to walk the streets again because that's when you're most vulnerable. If you're on a bike, you can cycle away. And it really did lift my mood and made me feel that I could, you know, respond in a way that's positive.
Thank God he was caught and sentenced. Were you informed when he was let out?
No. And whether that's the process, I don't know, but I wasn't interested in that, and I'm not interested in him at all. But, you know, I just feel for all those women that don't get that justice, and that's why it's really been important for me to invest in independent sexual violence advisors, because we know that when women go through this process, and it's more often than not women, that the court case is so long, 2, 3, 4 years, that they give up because they want help for their trauma, they want to get therapy, they want to move on with their life. And the waiting means that they fall away. So an ISVA or an IDVA sort of carry you through the process so that we get better outcomes in West Yorkshire.
You've got like a friend. If you've been subject to attack,
Talks
you've got
you
a
through
friend
the process.
to talk you through and be with you all that way.
Yeah.
And how many of those have you?
We've got 25.
25.
Yeah.
Good. Let's talk about everyday sexism. So the hoo-ha when you stood up, you were a Shadow Secretary of State, you had rushed from an event, you were in the House of Commons, you were stood up speaking for the opposition from the front bench. You had quite a classy dress on. It slipped off your shoulder. Literally, you could see a bit of your shoulder. Just talk us through the hoo-ha that then ensued.
Gloria, it was mad. It was mad because I'd got a broken ankle. Like you say, I was at a musicians' union event. Government had done something stupid. So I got an urgent question, got them to the house, and I was leaning on the dispatch box, and like you say, it just slightly fell further than slightly off the shoulder. And by the time I got back to my office, I was a slag, a slapper, breastfeeding, being taken from behind over a wheelie bin. I mean, the sexualisation of this moment. So my response was, oh, you know, sorry I can't answer all of you, not enough time, but who knew you could get so emotional over a shoulder? And this was picked up on social media, and then I decided to auction the £35 ASOS dress for the proceeds to go to the Girl Guides, who do brilliant work on body shaming for young girls. And we raised $20,200 for that dress. And it's just like, well, you know, thanks, trolls. You've done us a favour there. It's quite a good thing.
That's a really nice and positive way to end what's been a brilliant interview. Tracy Brabin, thank you.
My pleasure.
Coming up is Ann Widdecombe. Were people a bit scared of Margaret Thatcher, her MPs?
I think some were, but certainly she was not a figure that you got pally with.
Coming up, Shailesh Vara.
I remember with my mother queuing in a grocery store, and the people before us were served, and there were some white people behind us, and the storekeeper just ignored us and served them first, and then came back to us. And you accepted this, you know, that this was normal.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Ann Widdecombe, one of the most recognisable faces in British politics throughout our lifetime. Elected in 1987 as a Conservative MP, you stayed in Parliament till 2010. We're going to talk about your reflections on that period and some thoughts about where we are today. Margaret Thatcher and John Major, what strikes you about those two characters who were your Prime Ministers during your tenure?
They were very different people. The comparison I always make is in the way they used to come through the lobbies. Now, I'm sure that everybody watching this programme knows, but the way that MPs vote is there are 2 long corridors called the lobbies on either side of the chamber, and you go in at one end and you walk all the way through, and given your name at the other, and then you voted. And you have a quarter of an hour to get through the lobbies, so nobody dashes through unless they've got a specific reason. Everybody's standing around, looking for somebody they want to take something up with, or issue of mutual interest or whatever it might be, or they're just looking for someone to have a drink with, they're just looking round. When Margaret Thatcher came through the lobbies, her PPS used to go in front of her, and it would be like the parting of the Red Seas, and then Moses would come through and vote. When John Major came through the lobby, I'm sure his PPS was there, but he
was never... private secretary.
Yes, yeah. It's your parliamentary aide, basically. John used to come through and he'd say to one person, great speech you made the other night, he'd say to somebody else, how's your wife? Is she out of hospital? Is everything okay? And he went through like that, even at the height of all the pressure on his premiership, when we had no majority, when we were riven apart by the arguments over Maastricht, we were beset by sleaze scandals. Everybody wanted rid of us because we'd been there for a record 4 terms. Even then, he never came through any other way. Right. That, I think, tells you a lot.
Were people a bit scared of Margaret Thatcher, her MPs?
I think some were, but certainly she was not a figure that you got pally with.
Interesting. Did she do small talk?
She did small talk with close friends, I think. I'm not sure. May have all been very serious talk. But on the whole, no, she wasn't a particularly sociable person. She was focused on her project. She knew what she wanted to do, and by gum, she did it. And that was what she was focused on.
So you left the Conservative Party after all that service in 2019.
55 years I'd been a member of the Conservative Party. I joined at 16 as a young Conservative.
Why on earth did you leave?
Anybody who can recall those awful years when we'd had the referendum, but nobody really wanted to actually put the result into practice, and then we had the absolutely hopeless premiership of Theresa May. I suddenly thought, hang on, this is, as it then was, 2019. In 2016, we made this decision, and nobody there is actually putting it into effect. And I was so angry about it. Also, I was angry about the betrayal of Afghan interpreters, which got worse as time went on. I thought, no, we voted Brexit. I want Brexit. Conservatives aren't going to give us Brexit. So I joined the Brexit Party.
They have now, and Theresa May, my goodness, it seems like a lifetime ago. Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak. At any point did you think, oh, actually, I quite like this one. Maybe I should go back to home? No?
No. I mean, you say, oh, you know, they've done it now. They've done Brexit now. Really? Northern Ireland is still in the single market. Because of the situation in Northern Ireland, we're still subject to quite a lot of EU law, which we shouldn't be subject to any if we'd actually left. I don't consider that Brexit has been done in anything but name. But, you know, given where we are now, and I always say this, let's try to take maximum advantage of where we are, rather than lamenting that it hasn't been done, and it hasn't. So, no, don't expect me to be overwhelmed with admiration. And then what did we do with the Afghan interpreters? Left it right up to the last minute, when the Taliban was actually sweeping back. Then had a chaotic attempt at a rescue, which we should have been doing over years, literally. Chaotic attempt at a rescue, left so many behind. Some of them fled into Pakistan, from which we have not taken them. And it was a total betrayal. They put their lives on the line for Britain, and we said, not interested. We didn't use those words, but that was our attitude.
You were in Parliament, obviously, in 1997. You've talked about John Major's difficulty as Premier.
Yeah.
The writing was on the wall.
Absolutely. We all knew that, yeah.
Any parallels with what's happening today? Do you think the writing is on the wall that a Labour government
It's ludicrous, isn't it? I mean, John Major had a tiny little majority, you know, which gradually, over time, with the attrition caused by deaths and by-elections, went down to, you know, about 2. He had a minuscule majority. And Boris came in with a majority of 88-0. And most of that majority is still there. It's been slightly reduced. Most of it's still there. This is a government which should be able to do anything it wants to do, and it's hopeless. And what I now have come to the conclusion, and I've resisted this for a long time, but I think now it's inevitable, there is a fault line in the Conservative Party over Europe which is not going to go away. It's just not going to go away. I mean, I think everybody thought, well, the referendum will settle it. Then when the referendum went the way they weren't expecting, they thought, well, actually, when we do get Brexit, that'll settle it. The argument is still there. I think it is time for another right-of-centre party.
Why is reform, of which you are a member, not cutting through, if that were the case?
Well, yeah, you can't really complain. We're at 8% in the polls. Now, for a tiny party, you know, that's relatively new, that's not bad going, actually. And I think by the time we have proper policies in place, and that always takes time, we don't do that on the hoof, by the time we have proper policies in place, which will be well before the next election, added to the fact that unlike the Brexit Party, we are standing in every single seat except Northern Ireland. We're standing in every single seat. I think that we will get cut through. I've no doubt about that. Now, I'm not saying we're going to be swept to power. I'm not quite that optimistic. I think it quite likely will hold the balance of power. But whatever we do, we will fire a tremendous warning shot across the bows of the Conservative Party, which is what the Brexit Party did in the European elections in 2019, when we swept the board, just swept the board. That sent the message, get Brexit done.
More from Ann Widdecombe after the break.
And I didn't go for the fake tan. I never had any tan at all. And I never had eyelash extensions. I tried to keep it as normal as it was possible to keep anything on Strictly Come Dancing.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
So when you were elected to Parliament,
yes,
94% of MPs were men. We've come a long way since then. Do you think Parliament has improved because it looks a bit more like Britain?
No, I think it's gone the exact opposite way. I think that Parliament, far from improving, is now a very, very third-rate calibre indeed. When I look at, some of the big people that were there in my time, I mean, on both sides of the House. Let's look at the women. Let's look at the women. You had Thatcher, you had Betty Boothroyd, you had Shirley Williams, you had Barbara Castle. These were big figures, very able, very capable. Now you've got an awful lot of miniskirts, but, not much talent. And I think that was due to the way that Parliament changed. Now, I'm all for more women in Parliament, but they've got to get there on exactly the same basis as the men. They've got to get there by beating all the competition. And first of all, the Labour Party abandoned that stand and abandoned merit in favour of all women shortlists. And then the Conservative Party, with Cameron's A-list, abandoned merit in favour of equal numbers on the shortlists. And in the end, people were getting into Parliament who, frankly, wouldn't have got there if they'd had to do what the rest of us had to do, which was compete on a level playing field with the men.
When you're an MP, a female MP, and there's only 6% in the House of Commons, did your colleagues treat you, those tiny number of women, differently? Were you subject to... No?
No. I mean, I went into Parliament knowing that I was an MP. I didn't regard myself as a woman MP. I was an MP who happened to be a woman. That was no more important than the fact that I was an MP who happened to be short and fat rather than tall and thin. It was just a physical fact of life. But I was an MP. I was doing an MP's job. I was competing in the MP's environment. And I had to do all the things that the men were doing. And I think that determines how you're treated, because I went in never expecting to be treated any differently from the men, never having an issue with the fact that there were too few women. But I remember vividly, shortly after all the Blair babes got in, 101 of them, you might as well have had 101 Dalmatians, quite honestly, 101 of them, all came in at once. And about 6 months after they arrived, one of them came up to me in a corridor and she said to me, "Anne, isn't it horrible how the men are so rude to us?" And I said, "Yes, and isn't it horrible how they're so rude to each other?" And she hadn't thought of that. She'd just been roughed up in the chamber. She assumed it was because she was a woman. In fact, it was because she was useless.
Right, you converted to Roman Catholicism in 1993.
Yes.
That was following the Anglican Church's decision to allow the ordination of women.
Yes.
Why shouldn't a woman be able to be a vicar?
It's theological. It's got nothing to do with can a woman give a good sermon. I reckon I could give a great sermon. It's got nothing to do with can a woman be a good pastor. I think women make excellent pastors. It's purely theological. It is can you have a woman standing in persona Christi at the point of the consecration. Now that is what effectively it is about. But that was, for me, that was the last straw in a very large bundle. And I mean, I had 1 foot over the Tiber already, and that debate on women's ordination, which wasn't about should this happen, it was about if we don't do this, we won't appeal to the world, because the world's moved on. And I thought, hang on, I don't want a church that follows the world, I want a church that leads the world. But as I say, it was it was the last straw in a very large bundle. I would have gone to the Catholic Church, supposing that we'd never ordained women in the Anglican Church. I would have gone to the Catholic Church within about 5 years of when I actually did go.
Let's go a bit lighter now.
Let's be very light.
In 2018, you're in the biggest TV show on the planet. You're in Strictly Come Dancing.
Not in 2018, 2010. 2018 was Big Brother, you may be thinking of.
Thank you, Anne, for correcting my reality television shows. In 2010, partnered with Anton de Beck. The sequins, the fake tan.
Never had it. Never had fake tan, never had hair pieces, never had eyelash extensions. I said, look, the way that I carry on, if I have a hair piece, it'll end up on the floor. Because, the way that Anton was throwing me about, I said, don't be daft, it'll just end up on the floor. And I didn't go for the fake tan. I never had any tan at all. And I never had eyelash extensions. I tried to keep it as normal as it was possible to keep anything on Strictly Come Dancing.
Are you in touch with Anton de Beck still?
Oh, yes, I'm in touch with Anton, and I'm very occasionally in touch with Craig, yeah.
Ah, interesting. Final question, personal one. You have never married, you've never had any children. Any regrets?
None whatsoever. Really, none whatsoever. I know it's very difficult to get people to understand this, but the fact that I didn't marry was a mixture of choice and chance. It was chance because Mr. Right didn't happen to come along. It was choice because it was never a big enough priority to go out looking for him. I'm quite content. If he had come along, perhaps things would have been different, but I'm content either way.
Ann Widdecombe, you are one of a kind, and it has been a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you. Coming up, Conservative MP Shailesh Vara.
Any of your viewers watching, if you're asked for your money, give your money over.
Unless you've got a black belt in Taekwondo.
And even then...
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Shailesh Vara, elected as a Conservative MP in 2005. Your family came here in the 60s from Uganda. You were 4 years old. You couldn't speak a word of English. How did you cope?
Well, you know, young children can be quite resilient, and we were fortunate as a family that my father had come to the UK 9 months beforehand. So he'd got a job and he'd got rented some accommodation. So he actually met us at the airport. You know, he sent some money over for us to buy tickets. So we came over, he met us at the airport, and we actually went back to a home. And so there was that stability of the warmth and comfort of a home, which of course is a lot different to what happens nowadays, because of course some people by way of immigration will just come to the country and then expect the state to provide them with accommodation, welfare benefits for food and everything else. But it was certainly very different in those days.
Was the debate as toxic as it feels now? Was it more toxic? Maybe you don't think it's toxic at all?
I think the debate in Parliament was not so toxic, but I think the prejudice on the ground was very raw and very real. For example, I remember as a child, you know, you would walk past places for bed and breakfast or restaurants or pubs, and there would be signs saying no minorities. And believe me, I'm using polite terms when I say no minorities. The language was pretty crude. I remember with my mother queuing in a grocery store, and the people before us were served, and there were some white people behind us. And the storekeeper just ignored us and served them first, and then came back to us. And you accepted this, you know, this was normal. And I remember as a Cub Scout, 8-year-old with my little cap and my goggles and my neckerchief and whatever, proudly going around knocking on doors to do a bobber job. And for your viewers who don't know what that is, I mean, that was when you simply knock on a door and say, can I do something, a small job? And they'd give you a bob, a shilling in old money, and all of that money then went to charity. And so I was this happy 8-year-old boy about to press a doorbell, and on top of it there was this little plaque, and it said no, and I'm not going to use the words, but it was a 4-letter word which begins with W, and the 3rd and 4th letters are GS. Now I was 8 years old. I didn't know what that word meant, but I had a gut instinct that it referred to me. So that was one doorbell that I gave a miss to.
It's remarkable change that we've undergone in this country, not least that Rishi Sunak. He is our Prime Minister. He is not white. He is a Hindu. It's barely remarked on, really. It's such a journey, isn't it?
It is such a journey in my lifetime. And remember, Gloria, I was born in Uganda at a time when Uganda was part of the British Empire. And you know, we now have Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. And in my own case, having been born in a country part of the empire, I was in the cabinet last year. And that journey, I do remember when I was in the cabinet, at the cabinet table, thinking that, you know, born in an empire country and yet sitting around that table of influence from which the empire in the past had been run, basically.
And when you did join the cabinet members become members of the Privy Council. You were the last person to be made a member of the Privy Council by the now late Queen.
Absolutely treasured moment. I was the last person to be personally sworn in. I think there was one virtual swearing in after me, but I was the last personal swearing in, and it was a lovely moment. I'd been appointed to the cabinet the day before, and the first thing I did was to go to Northern Ireland to make my presence felt there. Got back, taken to Windsor Castle, and then to go in that wonderful room and to swear allegiance to Her Majesty, and you know, kneel down. And the Privy Council, of course, is a personal oath to Her Majesty, and to have done that, and I swore on the Bhagavad Gita again. How the world, how UK has changed, that I took the oath on my own Bible equivalent, the Bhagavad Gita, which is the book for Hindus, which I got to keep afterwards. And after I'd been sworn to the Privy Council, then I took another oath to collect the seals of office for Northern Ireland. But yes, you know, great privilege that in her long reign, I was the last one to be personally sworn to the Privy Council.
So it's a remarkable journey that you've had. It was third time lucky for you. You stood in two unwinnable seats.
Second one was marginal, but the time wasn't right for the Tories to win seats.
So third time lucky when you get into Parliament. Did you experience any prejudice on the way to getting a safe seat or subsequently?
It wasn't the easiest of journeys. I remember when I was trying to get into the candidates list in the 90s, the Conservative Party candidates list, and I was told by the senior agent at the time that the best that I could hope for would be to win back a Labour marginal seat where your own kind would be expected to vote for me.
How did that make you feel?
Well, it wasn't what I wanted to hear, but I was mindful, given the experience and prejudice I'd experienced in the past. I was not deterred because my basis was very simple. One day, somebody who is not white is going to make it as a Conservative MP, so why shouldn't it be me? And that's what kept me going. And I was mindful that, you know, the vast majority of the public are good, decent, honest people, and not everyone was going to judge me on my colour. So having been told that, I then said, fine, if that's what it's going to be, I'll still fight my battles. In 1997, my no-hoper, I stood against Claire Short in inner city Birmingham. I wasn't going to get anything. I was just picking up battle wounds then. In 2001, I lost by about 850 votes.
Oh, right. Gosh, that would have been a painful night.
The Labour MP, said Labour, ironically, used the race card when he said, because it was a 95% white constituency, 5% non-white, and the majority of them were Bangladeshi Muslims. And he was stupid enough to say publicly that, you know, the Tories had picked the wrong type of Asian. And what he meant was that I was a Ugandan-born Hindu, whereas the Asian population in Northampton South were primarily Bangladeshi Muslims, so they wouldn't vote for me. Everyone condemned him, all the media, apart from the Labour leadership. Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and Peter Mandelson stayed silent on it. But 2005, 99% white constituency, lovely seat. It's been a great privilege to have been their MP, elected 2005, subsequently re-elected 4 times. But the story there is, of course, having been told in the late 90s, the best I'm going to be able to do is win a seat where your own kind are going to vote for you, then to be in 2005 selected for this wonderful seat in Cambridgeshire, just shows what a fantastic country we are and how far we are moving and have moved in just a few years. So an interesting journey, but it worked out well in the end.
And did you always know you were a Conservative? Did you ever think about maybe I'm Labour?
You know, look, to be perfectly honest, people would say, well, you know, which party is, minority people would say, you know, which party is more favourable for minorities? And the truth is, Gloria, when I started on this journey, both parties weren't too keen on having minorities. The Labour Party would say, we love the minorities, but then if you look at the areas where the minority people lived, some of the poorest areas with the Labour councillors, Labour MPs, they were doing nothing to bring them out of those areas. And as far as the Tories, all credit to them, they told you to your face that they didn't want you in the country, and there used to be debates at Tory party conferences to that effect. So my view was, you know, neither of them it could be judged on in terms of race. But so I looked at the ideas and the philosophies of both parties, and I thought I identified a lot with the Conservative Party. It's, you know, family values, education, aspirational, and to achieve as much as your ability and talent will allow you to achieve. And so that's why I went for the Tory party, the helping hand up rather than helping hand down.
You're a black belt in Taekwondo. Have you ever had to use it?
Yes, I have had to use it once. It was in the 80s. I used to live in Aylesbury, and I got a black belt at the age of 17. And sometimes I used to train with members of the English Taekwondo team. And they used to train in Covent Garden on a Saturday afternoon. So I'd gone to train there, and it was unlucky for the people that I encountered, because I was just returning after a 2-hour training session with some of the top fighters in the country. So I was all warmed up, all limbered up. These 3 guys, that they wanted my money. I didn't really feel like giving them the money that I had with me.
What time of night was it? Was it night?
It was in the middle of the day.
Middle of the day, in central London?
In central London. I was, I think it was Jubilee Hall where I used to train, and so I was making my way from Jubilee Hall back to Covent Garden Tube Station. And it was a street which wasn't busy, but complete daylight. It was middle of the afternoon, I think about 2, 3 o'clock or something like that. And so they said, we want your money. And I said, look, I've only got enough to get home to Aylesbury. And then suddenly one of them lunged at me. And then events unfolded very quickly, where he and the other 2 were on the floor. But it's... I mean, can I just say, Gloria, any of your viewers watching, if you're asked for your money, give your money over.
Unless you've got a black belt in Taekwondo.
and even then, I tried to...
reason with them. You didn't want it to end in violence.
No, I didn't want to, because you only use whatever skills you have as a very last resort.
Yeah, you must have been terrified.
Well, no, I wasn't terrified, but I was just mindful that this could get ugly.
Yeah.
And you know, to get your black belt and things like that, you have to break roof tiles and pieces of wood and whatever and so on. So, you know, I mean, the press-ups that we do at that level are on your knuckles. You know, just these 2 knuckles. Yeah, you don't use all 5 hands.
You can do press-ups on your knuckles.
On your knuckle, and just these 2 knuckles, not all 4 either.
Do you still do them? Do you still?
Well, when I'm trying to pretend that I'm exercising, yes. Instinctively, I will just go on my knuckles. I can't now go and do it on the hands, even if I wanted to, because instinct will just take me there. But I'd like to have carried on training, Gloria, but sadly, career and family and all of that has taken over, so...
Don't mess with Shailesh Vara. What a point to end on, but also to see the difference that this country has undergone in terms of race relations through your eyes. Your personal lives has been a fascinating journey. Shailesh Vara, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Back next Sunday at 6 o'clock for Gloria Meets.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. After a very warm, hot, even weekend, there are signs of a change on the way into the new working week. Behind this cold front, our winds are shifting more to a westerly direction. That's helping to feed in some less humid and slightly fresher air across the UK. Whilst this cold front is still with us, though, there is still the chance of some heavy outbreaks of rain across north-east England, north-east Scotland throughout the start of this overnight period, but tending to turn drier for everyone, apart from a few showers across the far northwest. But with those fresher conditions in place, temperatures will be a notch lower than last night, generally falling down to 12, 14 degrees Celsius, so a little bit more comfortable for sleeping for many of us. Monday then sees a lot of sunny intervals to start off the day, but we'll start to see some showers bubbling up for late morning into the afternoon, particularly across the northern half. Those could be heavy with a few thunderstorms in there as well. Wales, central southern areas of England largely staying dry with some sunny spells. Noticeably fresher though for a lot of us. Temperatures generally around the high teens in the northwest, close towards low or mid-20s further towards the south and east. The showers will die off as we head into Monday evening and allow a relatively fine end to the day. But come the second half of the night, we're going to see a band of rain push its way into Northern Ireland, and it then becomes a damp start for Western Scotland, Northern England and into Wales, and that rain will continue to push through during the day. The most persistent and heavy bursts for parts of northwest Scotland, northwest England and northwest Wales. It will turn patchier further to the east, and actually southern areas of England towards the southeast may stay dry throughout the day, but still rather cloudy compared to of late. That rain continues to push its way through, but there's further weather fronts and low pressure systems waiting in the wings out in the Atlantic to bring us relatively unsettled conditions throughout the rest of the week. So further rain at times, temperatures around the high teens to mid-20s. Bye-bye.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold